You're watching Unrendered on IKTV. I'm Tony Regisford, and my guest on the first edition for 2015 is the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. the Honorable Ralph E. Gonsalves. Dr. Gonsalves, welcome again to the studios of IKTV, and I think you make it a habit of being my first guest, at least for the last 2 years. We've been keeping up that trend.
Well, I'm very happy to be here, and I wish your viewers a wonderful, productive new year, and yourself.
Thank you. Now, we're going to talk about a book that was published recently, a compilation of 3 essays that you wrote, and the title of the book is Our Caribbean Civilization and Its Political Prospects. 3 essays by Dr. the Honorable Ralph E. Gonsalves, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I will like to tell my viewers that we would more or less contain the discussion to that, so we may not get a lot of local juicy politics this time around, but for sure we might digress. Now, our Caribbean civilization, I know you are a main proponent, you are a chief advocate of the Caribbean civilization. You talk about it almost at every opportunity that you have to refer to it. So before I question you on the essays that you've written, let's examine the term civilization. And I'm going to use what you used in the book, a quote from Kenneth Clark. A civilized man must feel that he belongs somewhere in space and time, that he consciously looks forward and looks back. And for the purpose, it is a great convenience to be able to read and write. I leave it there and I ask you to expand on why you chose to pull that quotation from Kenneth Clark to develop the arguments in the rest of your essay.
The subject of civilization has been one which a number of different authors have written about. Mm-hmm. But Clark, who had a program many years ago on British television, on
right.
BBC.
He's a British author, isn't he?
Yes.
Yes.
And he's written a book on it. And what he does is to put in a very common sense way what we talk about a civilization. I mean, it's people with some sense of commonality.
Right.
They're occupying. Well, they're not just occupiers of the seascape and landscape. They are actually permanently in possession. They own it. It is theirs.
Right.
And they occupy the space. And they occupy it over a prolonged period of time. They have a particular history. Mm-hmm. They have a particular nobility. They have an oral tradition, but they have the facility to transmit things in writing, people to read about them. And of course, since he had written that, in the age of information technology, you can store it in different ways, but you still have to write it, and you still have to read it.
And so that's why he says it's a great convenience.
It's a great convenience
to be able to read and to write.
And of course, it has the idea, the concept of a civilization has several different dimensions, and it encompasses a wide range of activities: social, economic, political, psychological, things which are tangible, things which are intangible, visible, invisible. And we can talk about those. And there is a certain fusion, and if you will, and cross-fertilization of ideas and institutions, but yet being a permanent owner, not merely an occupier, for a prolonged period of time within a particular seascape and landscape, you yourself evolve many features of life and living and production. And this is why it's, when you look at it comparatively, it is a challenge always to say, is this civilization better than this other one.
Than the other one.
They may be different. They may have certain similarities because, of course, they are constituted with human beings,
Exactly.
and all human beings have they have certain basic things in common. And then, of course, there are civilizations which are continental. There are island or seaboard civilizations. There are some civilizations which have manifested themselves in empire and are seen as major civilizations, in that the Roman Empire and the Roman civilization. You talk about the European civilization.
Right.
Some even talk about the British and American civilization. Right. And so that imperium has been attached to them. And there are others which are much smaller, which have never laid any claim and can never lay any claim to imperium, to empire. But nevertheless, they are functioning, alive civilizations.
In their own right.
In their own right, with a particular history, with an authenticity, and with a trajectory for further ennoblement. And our Caribbean civilization, which is an island or seaboard civilization, because we have Guyana, which is on the mainland, but Guyana is in a sense still like an island, and it is very much a seaboard civilization, even though it has a tremendous interior. And we have borrowed a lot because of colonialism, and there have been all these influences, but yet there are things authentic and unique and part of us because of our presence and our ownership for a prolonged period of time of this place called the Caribbean.
Which brings me to another. I want to use these two authors, writers that you have used actually in the opening essay and opening part of the first essay of your book. The other one that you chose to help to define civilization is Octavio Paz, who is a great Mexican writer. And you're taking this from the Labyrinth of Solitude and other writings. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but civilization is a society style. Its way of living and dying. It embraces the erotic and the culinary arts, dancing and burial, courtesy and curses, work and leisure, and so on. It goes on to say, but it is especially its submerged, invisible side, beliefs, desires, fears, repression, dreams. So just contextualize that for me. I know you touched a bit of on it when you were talking just now. Contextualize that with your own narrative of the Caribbean civilization. What Paz is saying here.
Well, I think what he's saying there is universal in terms of the principles, but the manifestation of those universalities would be very different in one particular context as against another. For instance, when he makes a comparison between the Mexican and the American civilizations. Right. Let's take some of the things which he has spoken about there. The way we speak.
Right.
We speak the English language, but we speak it in the Caribbean with particular cadences, with particular rhythms, with words which are innovative and very special to our part of the world. That's why I'm the professor from Guyana who was at UWI, Professor Alsop, has a book on the Caribbean dictionary, a big volume. Yes. In fact, I had given a copy when I was in opposition to the Parliament of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You take the way in which, but we use in our writings and in our speaking formal English, but we also use our own sets of words and enrich the way in which we communicate. And we do so when we speak,
right,
with certain flair and a certain rhythm. The way you and I speak. The Barbadians have a particular kind of diction and so
Right.
forth.
So-
but
so- so
but there's
they-
some peculiar ones. But the theme across is a certain
Caribbean way of speaking.
it's a richness
Yes.
of the language.
The derivations of the same thing, really.
Yes.
Right, yes.
That's one language. The way we cook.
So this is the culinary he refers to.
Yes, we have had borrowings because you see, what is so majestic and beautiful about our Caribbean civilization is this: we have come from disparate lands. We have the indigenous peoples, the Kalinagos, and they immediately interacted with the persons of African descent who came here. And we got the Garifuna. The Europeans came. Then more Africans came. This time they came as slaves, as distinct from those who had
Enslaved
come
people who came
from
on their free will. Yes.
well, not necessarily free will. They would have been slaves going to Barbados or somewhere else, but there was a shipwreck, and some would have come in other circumstances, and small numbers earlier. But in the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they would have come when sugar plantations were established after the British assumed suzerainty in 1763. No. We have afterwards the Portuguese, migrants, indentured laborers. We have the Indians. And then much later in the 20th century, we have the Arabs. So out of this amazing richness, what is called in Europe and North America multiculturalism, but this richness, where we have a creolization taking place in the landscape and seascape of the Caribbean, and bringing about different...
And in the context of a particular time. So
and a
we deal
particular
with
time.
space and time. Yes.
And the different influences, for instance, in the way in which we cook our food. We have influences from Africa, influences from Europe, indigenous influences, for instance, with arrowroot and madongo,
Cassava.
the cassava. We have the richness. We have the richness with the Indians, with particular way they deal with flour and with
the spices.
and the spices
And even
correct.
coconut oil,
Coconut.
which I think is something that the
And
Indians.
then of course the Portuguese with particular things with bacalhau, the saltfish, with olive oil, and which has been brought in with coconut oil here, because we don't have olive oil, we have coconut oil. The many of the cakes, sweet bread, which they had specializations.
Right.
Some wines, Gonsalves wine, not my family really, immediate family, my namesake. Christmas morning, people talk about and please the Seventh-day Adventists and the Rastafarian brethren, excuse this. It's because there are a number of people who love pork, and it's Gallic pork, which is a peculiar kind of culinary art come out of the Portuguese. So you have this amazing, and the Arabs with their own kinds of dishes and their sweets, which they're very special in their sweets. The ULP has every year something called smorgasbord, which is really all types of food from our different peoples in our St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
So you have a mini
and
food
the
fest,
Caribbean. You have a mini food fest. So that's one. The way in which we bury our dead and our wakes. These are peculiarly Caribbean, but they have drawn from other sources. Our parliament is a visible side of our civilization, but that is borrowed from Westminster, and we have certain features of it, and so on and so forth. So I think I give a sufficiency of examples. The viewer would be able to think of others, but it is in that context. You're looking at a holistic civilization. And very importantly, for a civilization to be able to survive and be sustained, it must have an economic base. It must have a productive base upon which all of these things would feed and in turn feed into the economy. It's as what some philosophers would say, a dialectical relationship.
Right. We're at the end of this section, but I want to come back to Paz, right? And the way he, and the same the labyrinth of solitude. He's talking about, and you were referring to all the things that we have borrowed or adopted or whatever.
And grown from us
And
too.
grown from us, right?
And even what we borrowed them, and we have put to them a particular flavor. The way in which we play cricket.
Right. And we'll get to that.
It's an English game.
Yes.
But we play it with a particular flair and a particular panache. I just watched Chris Gale in the T20. In the T20 against South Africa.
Oh, okay,
the first
yes.
one.
Right,
just before I came here to record this program. As an amazing innings.
Great. Now, yes, so here's Paz talking about what is Mexican and what is Spanish, I think.
Yes.
Right? And he's saying that if we are unable or if we repress that part of us, which is the Mexican, as far as he's concerned. I'm just paraphrasing what he's saying.
I'm with you.
Then we are in self-denial and therefore
absolutely.
almost condemned to solitude.
Absolutely. Because what is happening is this. You know, I have made a statement that we are not better than anyone, but no one is better than us. It comes out of an analysis of our civilization, our Caribbean civilization, and its magnificent Vincentian component. Because within our own Caribbean civilization, there are different sections, components. And we have to acknowledge them, but there is a oneness nevertheless. And importantly, there is a trajectory for further ennoblement because it is alive. And that is why you would see it manifested in my politics. When the United States of America says something or does something, and I don't agree with it, I say, but that is not us. That is not within our interests. We are not here as an appendage of the United States of America. We are not somebody else's problem.
Right.
We are part of an authentic civilization. So don't refer to us as a problem. Because when you refer to me as a problem, I then will say, but hey, you have a lot of problems in Brooklyn and the Bronx. To take two places, they have in other places too. And you send us evangelists. Well, maybe we should export some to you because we have some fantastic ones who have taken the universal principles of Christianity and who have fashioned a Caribbean theology, that is to say, to put some particularities to this universal doctrine of faith and redemption. So this is something which has to be in us, and this is what I want for us to inculcate, is that it has to be a noise in our blood and an echo in our bones. And the point that Paz, not just Paz, but George Lamin,
and people like Naipaul as well,
but though Naipaul has a very Eurocentric or very British view,
is one that is in denial of the Indian.
But we have to have a belief in ourselves. Paz talks about a sense of self-mastery as a virtue, and self-mastery as a virtue, and laziness as an absence of virtue. Because remember, I said it has to be linked to a productive apparatus.
Exactly. Dr. Gonsalves, we have to hold it there with the end of our first segment. I must warn our viewers, though, that we are going to overrun in this program, and we're going to take editorial privilege to do so, being our first program and being the fact that you are a most distinguished guest. So let's just hold
you're
it
very
there.
generous to me.
let's just hold it there for our first segment. You're watching Unrendered on IKTV. This is Decision 2015. My guest on this program is Dr. the Honorable Ralph E. Gonsalves, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. More when we come back.